Very good. I think we're almost at full complement, so we'll crack on. Those of you who come to conference regularly will know that we love a good discussion, a good panel discussion. Now, last time we were here, because of one illness, we only had 2 people on our panel, but we're delighted to have 4 today. And what a lovely bunch they are. So I'd just like to make a few introductions. You've met a couple of our panelists already, but starting nearest to me, we've already heard from Jean-Pascal Bobst, CEO of Bobst. We have next to him Eddie Fellows, CEO from Smurfit Kappa Group, UK and Ireland. And we have next to him Rob Bergin, Managing Director of Coreboard UK. And on the end, and I'm sorry you're sat on the end, Kate Hulley, Owner Manager of Belmont Packaging and Box Up Packaging. So can you give a round of applause to our panelists, please? Thank you. And the panelists were actually chosen by the committee. We put a list of lots of people together. And it was really people who have a great track.
They couldn't turn up.
They couldn't turn up, so we got this lot. What we wanted to try and do is get together a group of people who have a great track record in creating and managing teams of people. So that's the reason why we have our 4 esteemed panelists with us today. Okay, so we'll try and make this fairly light-hearted. These people aren't brilliant. They do know that these questions are coming, and they have prepared their answers. So hopefully this will go well. So I'll be moderating today. Just to set the scene, we talked at the head of conference that attracting and retaining great people is a challenge, especially with the labour market the way it is at the moment. So getting the most out of them to achieve your business goals is not easy. So these questions have been constructed around that sort of backdrop. So the first question, and I'd like to ask Jean-Pascal and Eddie this question, one at a time, otherwise it would be very messy. Let's talk about recruitment and onboarding. So Jean-Pascal, can you sort of describe the process within your organisation, highlighting what you believe to be the critical stages and what might be considered best practice, or anything that you feel that you do particularly well at Bobst?
So for the particularly well at Bobst, I should ask my people. I guess the most important is to know what you want. And it's not always obvious, because as we discuss a lot about new technologies, trends, or whatever, we need really to be very, very sharp at definitions of jobs and what we expect. Skills, behavior, and of course, human touch. Another very important for us, because the process overall, once it's very clear, I guess everybody knows where to look for. But it's, I guess, a tip for you, it's more on the pre-boarding, onboarding, and following the boarding. Pre-boarding means, I know, John, you will join us in 2 months' time. I get in touch with you. I make sure that everything is clear for the day you come. And all of a sudden, it's good for my HR people, also for the manager who will host him, because everything is set up, the chair, everything. If sometimes we fail. So if you call him 2 months late before, or whatever, weeks before, to say hello. When he comes, you have a detailed plan. And starting from the management level up, we have an induction week where they go through and discover the company. If they are in corrugated, they will discover folding carton, film, and other fields, so they know a little bit much more who is Bobst. Environment. So they create their network. And then after that onboarding week, I guess 3 months later, we make a small debrief to learn. Voilà.
Very good. Eddie, do you have anything to add to that? Anything that you think that Smurfit Kappa Group do particularly well, or any other stages in the process?
I think Jean-Pascal's captured pretty much everything I was going to say, so thank you for that. In thinking about the question, part of what I was also trying to reflect on is what's changed. If we think about particularly these more volatile and challenging times that we've all been living through, and the changes in the labour market, what's changed for us over that period? I'd echo one thing in particular that Jean-Pascal's just mentioned there, which is, in the past we would have recruitment and then we'd have induction. we'd find you and you'd come and join us, and then we'd train you. And the piece which I think has developed more clearly for us in recent times would be that onboarding period, the time between when you found somebody and when they actually join you, which is, in our experience, also the time when you're most at risk of losing them because somebody else persuades them to join them instead. So I think that whole onboarding, staying in touch piece is something that I would particularly call out now as a key difference for us. And then the other piece, maybe just only other piece to add to the Bob story, is the recruitment phase. Again, if we look back in our history, and as we can look across this room today, we know we're a very traditional industry. We know we're not a particularly inclusive or diverse industry. And so having to put some really conscious thought into how do we get better as a business. So at the recruitment stage, when we've got a decent chance of bringing maybe some different outlooks of life into our business, we've put a lot more thought into how do we advertise jobs, for example. Our traditional advert in our country, in our company, in our industry, would be quite masculine in terms of how it presents itself. So looking at the language that we use when we actually advertise. And then similarly, and I would say for right now, this is probably more for senior management positions in our business, giving a lot more conscious thought to who would be involved in the recruitment process. It's quite clear that if you've got 3 blokes interviewing and you've got 2 blokes and 1 lady in a shortlist, there's a good chance we all know what's going to happen. So thinking about how do we actually get balanced shortlists, thinking about how do we actually get balanced interviewing panels, and make sure that they're well prepared with questions that hopefully help them remove their bias from the room. Doesn't mean that we'd be into quotas, because we're not, of course, nobody would be, but at the same time, we have to recognise that if we want to try and find some different talent for our business, then we also have to go and look and try and recruit in a different way. So that would be the main thing that I would say has actually changed for us over recent years.
Thanks for that, Eddie. I mean, diversity, obviously, clearly very, very important, and it leads on to my second question. And I think attitudes are changing to this. I'm not wanting to put words in your mouth, but the next question would be to Jean-Pascal and Rob. Which of these do you advocate? Do you hire the people with the right skills, or do you hire the right people with the right attitude and give them the skills?
I think you might have the best skills. If you don't have the right attitude, it will not work. I guess I give my answer in the short term. You need to fit in the culture. But of course, you need to have the Uber of the world. You need to have the guy who is entitled to challenge you and make your journey, alive. So what we have done is to allow these different people, sometimes extreme, but they don't fit in a normal team organization structure. Then we try to create a career path for experts, if you want to say so. And so when we are very, eager, innovator type people, can be in a lot of different domains, we put them somewhere there, and they feel also honored because they know they are not a leader of people. They cannot manage maybe executions of, and they are not the best managers, but they are true innovator, incubator, and they can be 30 or 50 years old. It's not a question of age, obviously.
Very good. Thank you for that. And Rob, same question to you. Do you advocate, or do you hire the people with the right skills, or do you hire the right people and give them those skills?
Yeah, I very much believe that it's about employing people with the right attitude, and then develop those skills. In particular, in the younger generation, And I was recently invited to talk to a group of sixth formers at our local college, and it's a real challenge for the college to get that across with youngsters about. So we talked a lot around the basics, around the things that colleges don't teach you that employers are looking for, around reliability, punctuality, around being inquisitive, not being afraid to ask questions, but also not being afraid of hard work. And I think the general feeling in that discussion was good employers will recognise those qualities in people, and they will then be prepared to invest and to develop those people.
Very good. Thanks for that. We've talked quite extensively about onboarding and bringing people on into the culture of your business, so we don't need to linger on that. But how on earth do we make production roles more attractive? Either by challenging convention or working practices. How do we do it? Kate, you've probably got an opinion on this. Could you share with us some ideas?
Yeah, I love challenging convention. I'm, as some of you may know, a big advocate of the 4-day week. Why do we do a 6-2, 2-10, 10-6? It's about giving people in fixed places of work flexibility, and flexibility for me is definitely the future. Empower them to make their own decisions of when they do their plan and how efficiently they do the plan. And it's a bit of a take on job and knock, or job and finish. And it's surprising really how that really makes your business efficient, and creates gaps, and therefore creates opportunities for people to upskill and multi-skill. So I've found, certainly in my experience, by going onto the 4-day week and putting a huge amount of flexibility into the business, how that has certainly improved retention and attracted the younger generation into the business. It's been hugely powerful.
How long have you been running with the 4-day week now?
So we introduced the 4-day week in summer 2019, and put the whole business on it in September 2021. And there's no way we will be going back to a conventional 5-day week.
And is that a fixed Monday to Thursday?
Monday to Thursday, or if there's any major tournaments that happen on a Sunday evening, then we'll go on to Tuesday to Friday. But I don't...
Fantastic. And that's why nobody leaves your employment. Yeah, great.
But I think as long as the customer is served, we're in manufacturing, we do put heavy emphasis on service, and so we should, but we are manufacturers, and therefore we're in control of when we do that plan. And as long as we manage expectations, we can do that in whatever day of the week, whatever time of the day we want to do it. And I cannot emphasise enough how transformational it's been for our business.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Eddie, same question to you. How can we make production roles more attractive? And do we challenge convention about working practices?
Again, if I compare over time, and where we are today, where we may have even been only 10 years ago, I think that genuinely in our factories now, there are more interesting opportunities for anyone that can work for us, that does work for us. I think we all need our frontline teams far more involved, personally involved around safety. We need them to own far more of the safety story that in the past may have been seen as more balanced towards managers and safety managers. Now we need them to actually be leaders of safety for us on the front line. There's more opportunities for multi-skilling. We all need more flexibility in our factories, none more so than in sheep plants. And so the opportunity to grow, to learn more, to be involved in more, I think is ultimately does come back to the ambition of an individual. And that's where making sure that we have an active personal development process for all of our employees, regardless of where they work, if it's factory or office, if they have to have job manager in their job title. Having development plans that are bought into by every individual is a cornerstone of what we try and do.
Very good. Kate, you still have the microphone in your hand, so I'm going to change the order slightly, but it is a question that you've indicated you'd like to answer. You may have touched on it already, but how do organisations generally improve retention of their staff?
So obviously through offering greater flexibility, but also just touching on AI and where the future's going, what more can we offer employees? How can we give them more security, not only inside of work but outside of work? So what perks can we offer? There is flexibility. What's happening with the NHS, not to get too controversial, but we've put in healthcare for everyone, so that people have got a safety net if the worst happens and they get seriously ill. And it's really looking at what the next generation want. It's not about grafting. I was brought up, you graft and you graft and you graft to get where you want to be. It doesn't seem to be about that anymore. It's about work-life balance and what you can offer staff to help them outside of work as well as inside of work.
Very good, thanks for that. Now, Rob, you've had some experience of retention issues. We know that Core Board in the early days didn't retain that many people. You seem to have turned that ship around. You've got a very good, stable team now. How do you do it?
Yeah, you could call it a retention issue. I joined the business in 22. In 2021, Core Board's turnover was 63%. So a real challenge for a manufacturing business. And there was three key things for me really around that. The first one was really communication, and communication in terms of listening and engaging with the guys and really understanding why we had that high level of turnover. And then beyond that, then one of the big frustrations was really very much around training, who was being trained, what the roles were, really starting to invest in the people in terms of making sure that they were getting the right training, and making that very open with them. And then the third one for me was something that Kate also touched on. We were an hourly rate employer. We paid an hourly rate. We didn't do anything else. So for me, it was then about looking at a package. And some of these things don't necessarily cost a lot of money, but they mean a lot to the employer. So we introduced a medical scheme. We changed our death in service. There was a number of low-cost or even no-cost benefits, which meant we moved beyond being an hourly rate employer compared to rent around the corner, etc. And in doing that and investing in the training, we saw in 2022 quite a drop, but still high turnover. We dropped to 40%. In 2023, we're at 15%, and with the journey that we're on, we're very hopeful that this year we'll be in single figures, 5% and below. But it's been quite a journey for us, and it's been very much about listening to the guys.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Rob. That's great. I've got a question here. I see Eddie's got his microphone ready, poised to answer this one. Have you or will you embrace technology, stroke AI, to replace some of the jobs that your people currently undertake? Will this be to reduce headcount or improve processes? And do you have any examples?
Small question then.
Putting you on the spot.
How long have we got? The answer is yes. What else do you want to know? There you go. So yes, we have experimented. We are using AI in our business. Some of it's in our factories, condition-based monitoring equipment that can learn from the data feeds that we've managed to gather together, particularly on corrugators. Facilities where you can mine data in order to be able to tell stories with data. So yes, we are, I'd still say, experimenting, and Mike, who's here with us today, is leading this subject for us, because to be frank, we still haven't quite worked out how, in a practical, real-world sense, we can actually deploy it inside the business. We're still, I think, in a very much a learning phase, is the way I'll describe us. In terms of where do we see it at the moment, what I would see is very much, I think, the story that we heard this morning, which is a story of increasing efficiency and bringing more value to the propositions that we have. I don't personally yet see this as being something where I could see lots of roles and lots of jobs disappearing. I see it as something which will actually be more about us being able to bring more value to our customers and be able to engage differently with our customers. So for us, as I say, it's more an efficiency and product productivity type of investment, whether it be in the office or whether it be in the factory.
Very good. Same question to you, Rob, if you don't mind. You know, technology and AI to replace people for efficiencies or any other reason?
Not something we've looked at, but I think again, certainly around service and reliability, it's where we can improve processes, we can support what people are doing, get them more information. There are some specific areas where we have, as a sheep feeder, we have 25 3D games of Tetris every day when we're trying to get everything into a vehicle. Can that support that process? Will that improve service? What impact will that have on deckling of a corrugator, which again is about efficiencies and waste and all of those things. So I think for us, it's not something we're investigating now, but it's certainly there's an opportunity. And as Eddie said, I think the real opportunity is to move to a very preemptive reliability program, really understanding the assets and really understanding what's happening with your assets real time. That's where AI could really be harnessed. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Rob. Right, we've got one question which we're going to ask all four panelists, and I think we'll start from the end because Kate hasn't spoken for a while. So my final question to all four panelists, what advice do you have for companies in the room for managing their people at the moment? As broad as that.
So I think we'll all agree kind of the people is the hardest part of the job. And I would just encourage everyone to eat the frog and have the difficult conversations with staff. And be open and honest and encourage real psychological safety in your businesses, where people feel they can say what they're thinking and they're feeling without reproach, without fear of toxic retaliation. But certainly for me, it would be an encouragement of psychological safety and an open and honest culture.
Fantastic. And Rob, same question to yourself. Any advice?
Well, I think my wife would be upset if I ate the frog because we've got hundreds of them running around the garden. But I think for me, it's about listening. It's communication. We are in very difficult times. There's a lot of uncertainty. Try and share the vision. Try and share the journey that you're on. But then listen to the people and really understand their worries. Really, kind of, take the time to understand your people more.
Very good. And Eddie, to you.
How to follow that? I think I'd very much.
It's getting increasingly more difficult, isn't it?
I'm glad I'm not last on this one. I mean, first of all, I've got to say my prepared answer to this question, I entirely agree. There's no question that engagement, that structured listening, whether it be formal or informal, is getting increasingly important for all of us to actually know what people are thinking and therefore what we may or may not want to do about it. I think I'd sort of veer off though more towards the sort of system side as well, which is training. One of the observations that I would make is that there are not many businesses out there who I think are particularly great at training. We're very good at sending people on training courses. We're very good at saying, there you go, read that and point at that and there we are. But how much time do we actually invest into firstly making sure that managers are effectively trained so that they know how to support their people that are training. Funny enough, if your manager shows an interest in your training, if they're actively there to support you whilst you're being trained, if they give you the opportunities to practice the new skills, the knowledge that you've gained, then you might have a chance to be able to retain it. I'm of a certain age where if you tell me something today, I'll have forgotten it by the time we get to Friday. So unless you've given me a chance to reinforce what I've heard today through practice, through actually doing something, chances are I might have forgotten about it. And it's the same thing with training. So I think the way our training processes, the way our managers support training for people is something that a number of us have actually got room for improvement on, I would suggest.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Eddie. And same question to you, John Pascal. What advice do you have for managing our people?
I'm not sure it's an advice, but sharing experience. Surely what I explained a bit earlier is to provide a vision, a purpose in life, because I think the young generation, they will look for a purpose. They say, what do you have inside the box for me? And so they look for some real values and beliefs and references. So that's why our motto is knowledge, people, and values, because it's easy to say, very, very difficult to live, like with our kids or partners or wife or whatever. It's a day-to-day investment. Certainly, this culture of the company is the main driver for success, and of course, listening too. Active listening is part of the challenge we all face because time is always missing. And the heart and the empathy you can provide towards people as you remain very strict and demanding, but the empathy part is very, very important. And living those values, I believe, as a role model, which is quite tough, then you can really differentiate yourself compared to the neighbor or someone else who pretend but has a hard time to live those values.
Very good, thank you for that. Now, for the more observant of you, you'll realize that our panelists are from 4 very different kinds of organizations. So you've got a wonderful opportunity to ask them some questions, loosely around people, teams, and management. So we've got a couple of minutes here. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, we do have a roaming mic here. Sharon, our assistant, is coming around with the microphone. So if you do have a question, please put your hand up and we'll thrust a mic in your face. Okay. Please, ask away. We're very fortunate to have our panelists here. Simon, never to let us down. Fantastic.
You're welcome. It's to Eddie, really. You mentioned training, and I picked up on that point. Does Smurfit Kappa engage in mentoring as a form of training at all? Because you mentioned the sort of ambiguous, very generic training.
Yes. What else do you want to know? Yes, we do. I must admit, it's not there for everybody in the organisation. Mentoring, in its true sense, actually being quite an intensive support process. So it's not there for every single employee that we have. What we do have for certainly all new employees are buddies. So people who are there to sort of help you if you like in your early phases. But as an active policy, if you're a manager in our organisation and you would like to have a mentor, then yes, we would provide you with a mentor. And similarly then also for those who are coming through our early career development programmes, they would also have a mentor as well. Most of the time that would be somebody who's within the business, although as you get to the more senior roles, then more frequently then it starts to become somebody who's external to the business that we've partnered with for many years.
Thanks for that answer. Quite difficult to prescribe mentoring in some circumstances, of course. It suggests that they're not doing a grand job or need a lot of help. So quite a tricky one to broach that. Any other questions? We've got time for one more question. There's one down at the front here, Dan. Right down at the front, Sharon. Thank you.
Tim, actually, I'm going to direct this one to you, if I may.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
That's all right. With an association hat on, okay? If you look at what's happening in the States with reference to education, so there was an announcement last week, Michigan State University, $25 million invested for packaging studies. I think the numbers are something like 600 undergraduates, all of whom end up in the industry. 10,000 students over the last 15 or 20 years are in the industry. It accounts for about 40% of those employed within packaging. What can we do in the UK and Europe as trade associations? How can we sit with universities or colleges to actually put packaging on the agenda? Because we all know, we love this industry, everyone stays in it for about 1,000 years, but where do we get that next generation from? Because if we teach them and they live it and breathe it, they stay with us.
It's a very, very good question and something I've struggled with. How do you make our industry exciting, interesting? How do you get people wanting to join our industry? And once they're here, how do you get the best out of them? It's very, very difficult. We are not seen as a sexy industry, unfortunately. We have a presentation later today which is all about hearts and minds of very young children and junior school children. This is going to take some time. We can't just change mindsets like that. So, Steve is going to share with us what he's doing with local schools. We all have a shared responsibility here to make packaging thought-provoking, to make the environment a big part of our children's education. And with that, people will then gravitate towards our industry. It's a very long burn. What we can do as an association is do what we're doing, launching initiatives and training courses and things like that. But we're almost preaching to the converted here. We're training people who already made the commitment to our industry. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but it's a real problem.
And so if you, Eddie, take the microphone back, because I'm just about to ask you.
No, but
sorry.
I may just add, we are not an association, but what we try to achieve is with the apprenticeship center, we have more than 200 apprentices, so they know the industry a little bit. You work a lot also on packaging, talking as an employer around your community, and also share a bit the good message that packaging is not scrap, packaging is not just a waste, it's not polluting the planet. No, it's how we use packaging. So I believe we do have all in this room a huge responsibility to talk about packaging in a very positive way. And not saying less paper is better for the forest is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And talking about universities, and I know just because I've got kids going through that whole stage, there's been this massive sea change now where children are looking for an opportunity to study, but with an apprenticeship degree. So, Eddie, can I ask from Smurfit Kappa, as one of the leaders in the industry, what opportunities do you see to help students in terms of whether it's through business studies, whether it's through practical science in packaging and paper? Are there opportunities for Smurfit Kappa to help with university education?
I think there's no question that it's definitely there. Are we there right now? No, we're not as far well developed as we'd like to be. On the design side that we've talked about today, we worked very closely with Sheffield Hallam University to create the design degree that's there as a qualification for people in our industry. We have a couple of other examples where we've done the similar things with local colleges. It's a very relevant question, Dan, because literally coming out of last year, coming into this year, we've gone right back to look again at what we do in terms of early career talent within the company. And are we right to specifically target bringing graduates in through graduate development programs? Or should we start earlier and invest differently? And I'm mentioning it strangely enough because we actually decided to change, and so we are going to invest earlier and go differently. But we're not actually fully developed in terms of our thinking. The vision would be earn and learn. The vision would be degree apprenticeships. Either way, what we're at least doing this year to start off with is actually putting far more apprenticeships actually into our businesses across the piece. Traditionally, our industry, it was engineering. Now, I'd say we've probably got, Mike, I'm going to say at least half a dozen different types of apprenticeships, including several that are actually in the offices as well. So we're shifting. We haven't got there, but it's definitely a direction of travel.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you for your questions. That was great. And can we all put our hands together and thank our panelists? Thank you very much.